watching out for you. A Fox 5 I-Team investigation.
The GBI Crime Lab has analyzed DNA evidence that has successfully convicted the guilty and freed the innocent. But some now question how the Crime Lab interprets DNA cases when multiple suspects are involved.
Our I-Team examines the case of a convicted rapist and why experts say the DNA evidence used against him was wrong. Senior I-Team reporter Dale Russell has an exclusive report for us. Dale?
Russ, DNA evidence, experts say it's relatively easy to try to match one suspect to one piece of evidence. But when you have multiple suspects in the same crime and all could possibly be involved, it's a far different story.
I am innocent, and it will be proven that I'm innocent.
Kerry Robinson sits in jail, convicted of a rape he claims he didn't do. And the Innocence Project, which has helped overturn wrongful convictions by using DNA, believes he may be telling the truth.
As a scientist, he's excluded from a key piece of evidence in this trial.
Moultrie, Georgia, February 1993. Tyrone White and a friend set off on a neighborhood crime spree, robbing and shooting one man, then a day later they hit again. It started right here when Tyrone White busted through this front door and shot and robbed Charles Powell. Then just 3 days later, Tyrone White and two others broke into this home, robbed and gang raped a woman. Though the victim says the rapist tried to hide their faces, she picked Tyrone White and another teenager out of a local high school yearbook.
I was also in that lineup, but I didn't get picked out.
Tyrone White ultimately confessed to the shootings and the rape. When first questioned, he told police the other rapists were Cedric Moore and Kerry Lewis, no, Kerry Robinson. He repeatedly got Kerry's name wrong. Kerry Robinson's mother, Vera.
If I run with you, I'm your friend. I don't mistake your name.
Police offered White a deal to testify against Kerry Robinson and Cedric Moore during a 2002 rape trial. Were you there?
No, sir.
Did you take part in that robbery and rape?
No, sir.
The only person to implicate Kerry Robinson during the trial was Tyrone White. But in Georgia, you can't convict someone on the sole testimony of a co-defendant. You have to have something more, and the prosecutor had it with DNA evidence. But now some scientists say that DNA testimony was wrong. So you don't agree with the findings by the GBI?
Absolutely not.
Dr. Greg Hempekian of the Idaho Innocence Project has examined the DNA in this case. He believes Kerry Robinson is the victim of bad science.
I have a very hard time understanding how they concluded that Kerry Robinson cannot be excluded. I think it's an incorrect conclusion.
DNA testing revolutionized the way criminals are prosecuted. Using computers, scientists can now analyze DNA, creating graphs with numbers to identify a person's unique genetic fingerprint. They can then match DNA evidence from that suspect to a crime. But what if you have two or even three suspects?
How are you interpreting mixtures that have more than two people? And what is the basis of saying someone cannot be excluded? Where does that line end?
The GBI concluded Tyrone White's DNA was a match because 23 of his genetic markers, called alleles, matched the evidence from the rape. Kerry Robinson had only 2 alleles that were identical. That's far from a match, but according to GBI protocol, that's enough to say he can't be excluded as a suspect.
I think in this case an error was made. I think it is not a decision that can be defended among experts.
Dr. Hempekian asked a crime lab scientist from another state to review his work. That scientist's conclusion: too many of Kerry Robinson's alleles don't match the sample from the rape victim, so he believes Kerry Robinson is excluded. Why is this important?
Because there may be innocent people in prison. That's why it's important. And there may be guilty people going free.
GBI Crime Lab scientists wouldn't talk on camera, but told me on the phone one of the reasons they may not have been able to match Kerry Robinson's DNA to the evidence is because in mixed samples, they often don't see the entire DNA profile of a second or third suspect. They admit some crime labs refuse to interpret mixed samples, and others will only say the results are inconclusive. But in Georgia, even if just 1 out of 26 genetic markers match, Crime Lab Director George Herron says it's fair to conclude that suspect can't be excluded.
And you're comfortable with a scientific conclusion that somebody cannot be excluded?
Right, because I'm basically giving no conclusion. That's the same as being inconclusive.
I have no reason to believe that Kerry was involved. Nothing other than the testimony of an admitted liar and rapist.
Robinson's attorney, Rodney ZELL, is taking the issue to the courts, fighting to have the DNA analysis thrown out. He took on the case for free after Kerry Robinson wrote from prison. Why did you think the DNA was wrong? I mean, this is very complex stuff.
I know it was wrong.
How do you know it was wrong?
Because I wasn't there, and I didn't commit that crime.
Now, tomorrow night, DNA experts in Idaho put the state crime lab standard to the test. We sent them samples from 4 Fox 5 employees to see whether they match any of the DNA evidence from the Colquitt County rape case. Wait till you see our results. Russ, Amanda?
Boy, it seems like there's a big difference between cannot be excluded and whether that person should be included. But let's leave that aside for a second. Did the experts you talked to suggest that they think this might be going on in other cases in Georgia or around the country?
They fear that it is, not only in Georgia, but especially throughout the rest of the country. This case, Russ, is unique because in this case, they had to have this DNA to corroborate the co-defendant. So that's kind of unusual. Normally, you would have other evidence in a rape trial or any kind of case where your DNA is going to be a part of it. But what they fear is that throughout the country, there could be other people facing the same scenario, and there's no nationwide standards, if you will, to tell crime labs exactly how they interpret it. In fact, they leave it up to the crime labs to use the language that they want to use.
Yeah, you can see how that could be confusing if different labs are using different techniques.
What we heard from Dr. Herron here, the state crime lab, that some labs say that it's inconclusive, and some say they won't even touch a mixed sample like that. They don't even want to get into it. It's so confusing.
Can't wait to see what you have tomorrow.
Okay.
Dale, thanks very much.